All right, 7:06, calling the meeting to order.
You guys can use your mic.
Is green
Yeah.
on?
Green is on.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under indivisible, with liberty and justice.
for all.
All right. We have everybody here except for Steve. Does anybody have any comments on the agenda? Any changes?
Well, since the question came up on electing officers or re-electing officers, does that have to be on the published agenda to do that tonight?
I don't think you need to put that on the agenda. Let me just verify.
Well, if Steve's coming for the next meeting anyhow, I think we should just wait.
I would. Why don't we just wait?
Yeah.
Well,
All right. And then, yeah, we could ask him if he's going to be gone again next year
Okay.
at that point.
Why don't we just record that though, that we reviewed and we'll elect officers
Yeah.
during the April meeting.
Oh,
So-
sorry. Is that better?
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so we will accept the agenda as presented. Minutes from the February 14th meeting. I think there was some discussion of amending the minutes.
Yes, well, not necessarily to amend the minutes, but I believe when we had referenced before the standards of review, that the article I was concerned about was one, if the issue was created by the landowner or property owner. And in the documents that Scott gave us today, it's referenced as standard number 2. So I just wanted to confirm that the issue I was concerned about is standard 2 as is listed in Scott's notes and documents that he provided to us today.
Okay, so it's more of a clarification.
Well,
Correct.
I had the same concern, so I'll make a motion to amend the minutes to change the reference that Ed and Mark Hergenrader made from referencing standard number 4 to referencing standard number 2.
I second the motion.
Tom?
Yes,
Yes, for me.
yes.
Yes.
So I'll adjust those minutes.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So the meetings were accepted as amended by Ed's motion. Unfinished business, we have.
Before we go on, so a question for you, Scott. So then
Yep.
should I redraft that minutes for this change we just made? And just resend it all?
You could just make that change. Do you have the minutes there with you ready to be signed?
I do not.
You do not. So yeah, we could just get it done. I can make that amendment and then, or you can make that amendment, send it to me, and then we'll have the do you guys have the secretary sign the minutes or the chair?
I'm the secretary. I've never signed them.
You never signed them, so maybe you have the chair sign them, maybe you don't have anybody sign them. Most of the time you would have
Oh,
somebody sign minutes when they are approved, but that's fine if you don't. So just make the amendment and send it over to me and I'll put it in the file, the electronic file as final draft.
So Tom has a hard copy. Can I adjust it there and we sign it? Will that suffice?
Yep, that works.
Okay,
And then leave it with Rod and he can put it in my box.
okay.
All right. Moving on to the unfinished business, the public hearing for variance 24001 at 809 Glacier Road to allow the construction of a new shed, 10 feet by 14 feet that will encroach into the side yard setback to the east and the rear setback to the north. The project involves removing an existing 8 by 10 shed that has already been removed and the new shed has been constructed. So we will open the public hearing and allow the applicant to present. Oh, could you step up to the podium? Thank you.
First of all, I apologize to the committee for not being able to get online last month like I was supposed to.
Oh, could you state your name real quick?
Could I what?
State your name.
My name is Dennis Michaelak. I live at 809 Glacier Road.
Okay, thank you.
I originally filed for a variance with the help of Carol when Carol was here. That was 2 months ago or 3 months ago. And in the process of doing that variance, the reason I needed to do that variance was because I already had a shed that was 1 foot from the line. It was actually on the line, the property line of Mrs. Martinez. So I applied for the variance and in the process of applying for the variance, the 4-foot setback rule came into effect, and I was not aware that you had to be 4 foot. And even when I looked at the drawing, the 4 was so small, I was requesting a 1 foot variance and it came through as 4 feet. And we went through the whole meeting and and you approved that variance. I went home and never knew that I was supposed to be 4 feet back, which I couldn't be 4 feet off the line to begin with. So I did the project. I put up a retaining wall. I tore down the existing shed that was there. The shed that was there was in the dirt and it had rotted. And underneath that shed was home for some woodchucks and a whole bunch of mice. And so in the process of doing that retaining wall, I could not move the retaining wall any further back than it already is, because that hill that is there is the old Ridge Road bed. And the old Ridge Road used to run the top of that hill. That hill is made up of sand and pea gravel. And so when you dig into that hill, it begins to collapse very fast. So alls I did was put up a retaining wall in there far enough to be able to fit my new shed in there with the 1 foot variance I thought I had, but I did not. It was my mistake. So I'm here now to what am I doing? Re-asking for the variance for the 1 foot. And I understand there's some letters from some neighbors and maybe we can address those concerns too. There questions?
Yeah, I have a question. I think when looking through the documents, and I hope I may be mistaken, but from the surveying that looked like it was originally done, it showed the original shed was 4 feet from the property line or
No,
1
it
feet?
was not. It was right on the property
It
line,
was on the property line.
right on the east property line.
I believe in the staff report, it's stated as 1 foot from the east property line. Do you know where that number came from?
That's where it is. That's where the new shed is now, is 1 foot from the.
I have some answers if you would like them from that, for that type of information.
Okay.
Okay,
Say that again. I didn't. What was that, Scott? I didn't understand what you said.
I can answer the questions about the staff report to the ZBA if they would like me to. So I know where I got the answers, where those numbers that I used came from, and I can clarify that stuff when they ask me those questions.
So I do have a question about the north property line. When I look at the certificate of survey, it says that the north property line is 62 feet from the back of the shed. And in the notes here that said there was no, that I couldn't comply with that variance for some reason. You see,
If this wants me to answer that question, they can have me answer that question. So I need everything to be directed to the ZBA, and the ZBA then directs the questions.
okay.
So does anybody else have questions for the applicant?
Well, I'd like to know the answer to that question. So Scott, could you confirm the north setback?
So if you look at the new survey that's attached to your staff report, which is the new survey that was submitted as part of this application, not the survey that was submitted as part of the application that was approved previously. It shows the setback to the rear property line, which is the north property line, at 20 feet or 21.5 feet. So it also shows the what we're calling the east property line at 1.7 feet, not 1 foot, but 1.7 feet to the side of the shed. So we're using the numbers based off of the survey that was submitted to us as part of the as part of the as part of this ZBA hearing. So those are what was submitted to us in the survey. The 1 foot setback that I got for the existing shed, because the existing shed was already removed by the time I took over at zoning administrator, I used the dimension that was off of the original staff report by Carol Kersinich, your previous ZBA, that had said that the existing shed was 1 foot from the east property line. And that would have been before it was removed. Again, it doesn't really matter where the existing shed is. Once a existing nonconformity is removed, the standard then is not based on the existing nonconformity. It's based on a new structure and those standards of your variance request.
I got a question here. This retaining wall, you said you couldn't go to the east anymore.
Correct.
Did you put cement footers down, to put these blocks on, or did you just put the blocks down?
I put the blocks down on the sand and the existing pea gravel that was
The
there.
existing grade is what you used.
Right.
All it takes is time and effort to get that hill cut back.
Oh, you aren't gonna cut that hill back without losing the neighbor's driveway. I guarantee that.
Well. Okay. was impossible to do is what you're telling me.
Well, it's, I went as far as I could.
If you, I guess I can't say anymore because I wasn't there to see how it was done.
Does the ZBA have any more questions for the applicant? Okay, I think you can take a seat.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Would you guys like me to present the project?
Will that be helpful? Okay,
Please.
So what's in front of you guys tonight, at the ZBA is a variance, that's requesting. Obviously, the existing shed has been removed, so the replacement of the existing shed that was removed with a new shed that's already in place. The existing shed was 8 by 10. The new shed is 10 by 14. So it's a larger shed. The new shed is shown on the survey that was submitted at 1.7 feet from the east property line, where 20 feet is required by the code, and 21.5 feet from the north property line, where 35 feet is required by the code. So those are the two variances, the variance to the east property line setback and the variance to the north property line setback. So I did give you a little history section in your original staff report for February 15. Just a reminder that this did go to the September 2023 ZBA and was approved for a variance for a 4-foot setback to the east property line. At that time, it still would have been within the 35-foot rear yard setback. But that wasn't discussed at that meeting. So the other thing is that, so he got his building permit showing the 4-foot setback. And then when I started, I requested a final inspection, and prior to a final inspection on a lake, we need a survey certificate stating that the project was built to the required as shown on plans. And when the survey redid that survey, he did not provide that. He showed that the shed was 1.7 feet from the property line and not 4 feet. So that's why we're back in front of the ZBA tonight. So the ZBA, then I did, there's some pictures. I got a picture of the existing shed versus the new shed on page 2 of the staff report. And you guys have all been out there, I'm sure, as you all go out to all of these prior to the meetings. You can see the certificate of survey that was approved in September on page 3 versus the new survey that we received from his surveyor for this project on page 3 of the staff report, showing again that 1.7 foot setback on the east side and the 21.5 foot setback to that north property line. So those are the two variances. So when you're reviewing this, you'll review this based on the standards that are in the zoning ordinance. There are 7, I believe, variance standards. And those are in your staff reports on page 5, 6, and 7 of the staff report. And below each one, I give you the standard, and then I give you some information, staff comment on each standard. And then the last item that you have for tonight's meeting is you did receive some correspondence. So you have the three original correspondence that we received from that were attached to your original staff report, and what were submitted at the meeting that night. And then you have a fourth correspondence, which Rod, I believe, put on the dais tonight so you could review it. And that was another correspondence from Dave Spratt, who is listing similar concerns to the concerns he listed in his previous correspondence, which he's concerned with the runoff from the pad that's under the deck or under the shed running off onto his property, and the new grading that was done on the site running onto his property. Again, the shed and the grading, we have regulations on the sheds, and that's what we're dealing with tonight, the setbacks. Grading and patios like that, we don't have grading regulations in our zoning ordinance. Usually water running onto neighbor's property is a trespass and is a civil matter that's handled between property owners. So that could create a civil problem between these two property owners. Although we don't want to create situations where there's this watershed shedding off onto a neighbor's property either. So that might be something that you want to look at. You want to make sure that this meets all the variance standards because you are allowing this to have a setback. There are things that could be done to make a shed meet the required setbacks. Not all of the setbacks, obviously, but the 4-foot setback, like one of the commissioners was alluding to, is the retaining wall could have been an engineered retaining wall instead of a dry stack retaining wall, and would have been engineered to hold back the soils. Other items, the shed could have been a 8x10 shed, and it would have, instead of been 1.7 feet, it would have then been 3.7 feet from the property line, so closer to the 4-foot setback. No shed could be located in this location, and then we don't have the variance request either. But again, you can read my conclusions in the staff report based on the standards, and I think you guys should discuss these standards and then make a determination at tonight's meeting. I do have example motions of denial and example motions of approval in the staff report for you, if you would like to use those also.
Thank you, Scott. All right, I'll open it up to discussion among the board members.
Okay, I'll say that I still have concerns with standard 2, that the condition was created by the applicant. I have some concerns with standard 6 and 7. Standard 6 is that the minimum variance possible to allow reasonable use of the land, and as you mentioned, Scott, a smaller shed would help. And 7 is that it wouldn't be injurious to the neighborhood or otherwise detrimental to the public interest. That's a little strong, but with the concerns from the neighbors and what they've written, they all seem to feel there's going to be injurious situation with water running off, and he sent those pictures. So I know this board has always tried to work with applicants and come up with a solution to allow them to proceed. I think, Tom, you hit it. One possible solution was to try to move that a little further to the west and doing something with that hill. I know, Dennis, you felt that was not possible, but I would offer up, is there an opportunity to postpone it, let the applicant work on another revised application that might do something to improve some of these concerns of the neighbors in that small setback? I think the other thing in the staff report was that you're going to have to trespass to get to the back of your shed or open that door. And that's going to create a situation where you're going to trespass unless you can stay in a 1.7 foot strip there. It just looks like that's a bad setup to approve that in condition. I mean, I want to see this shed happen, and I'm wondering if there's a way to move it a little further west to eliminate those issues. That's my perspective. And we have tabled agenda items like this to give the applicant a chance to try to revise their plans to come up with something that could work and probably not raise all the concerns of the neighbors.
I agree with you, Ed.
Mark, did you have any concerns in particular?
Um, if, I'd like to see if there was a way to, one, remediate the issue regarding the runoff of the water. That seems to be a concern of the neighbors. But if there is a way to, alleviate the runoff from the shed and the slab would not go onto your adjoining neighbor's property. I'm not sure what could be done regarding that, but, if there was something that could be done with that, I think that would alleviate some of the concerns expressed by the board members. The second is, did you have somebody build the shed for? Oh, it was pre-built. Okay. Okay. So is it just sitting on the slab?
Could be moved over. It's a foot right now from
Mhm.
the property line. It could be moved over. Could be moved over. 18, or I'm sorry, 6.5 inches, the rear shed, and 10.5 inches on the front shed. So that would put the roof right up against the wall.
Okay.
So that could be done.
Is there a way to consider because I think you had put the retaining pieces in there. Is there, and that seems to be where they're located right now, seems to be a restriction on you being able to move the shed even further away from the property line.
Move the two top blocks. You want to see it?
I have seen it.
Okay, so if I move the two top blocks that you're talking about, I could move the shed over 18 inches in the rear and 23 inches.
Okay.
So that would be, then we are 32 inches and 36 inches from the property. That's as far as I can go.
Okay. And I think you had mentioned that originally the structure that was torn down, regardless of what the um, first variance or what the variance was, but the original shed was actually on the property line. Okay.
What about some kind of gutter or something on that
Well,
roof
that is
and,
one of the recommendations that made in his report, that a gutter could be put on
yeah, that would alleviate
Yeah.
that problem
the
too.
east side. And run it across of the front or the back. whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That's possible.
And I guess you don't have to use the door on the side.
Use that, matter of fact, the only time I ever use that door was to see if the lock worked.
Okay.
It's never been open other than that. That wall will be shelving, so you won't be able to open that door anymore.
So if the door is
I've got it marked.
on the front, right, right. But if that door was non-functional, then that's really not a door there that would impose a trespassing issue.
I think 36 inches would eliminate the trespassing issue too. You're trying to get a
Right.
wheelbarrow back there, something big you want to store, lake toys.
So that would include shipping 2 blocks over and moving the shed all the way to the wall, to the retaining wall. And then I'd have 36 inches from the property. That's where I think 32 on one and 30 the other. Put a gutter on it if I have to.
I have a question. Is there a way with the retaining wall blocks to prevent, a neighbor had a concern about the sediment runoff going around the block, on the back wall. Is there a way to prevent that runoff? Or reroute it somehow?
Build up the side of that retaining wall, it's just gonna go around the top. I don't know how to stop that.
I think what you're mentioning, Angela, if I'm hearing your question right, it's the north side of the retaining wall running around and then running to the east. Could you channel the water to run to the south where it runs out into the road? I think that is that the concern you were expressing?
Yes, the side where it runs to the neighbor property.
Yeah, where it runs. So it's a matter, I think, of trying to channel that water to the south. So it's not going east into the neighbor's shed. That's what, I don't know if you saw the staff report in their emails. It's all in there. In the record, so.
Oh, Scott, did you want to chime in?
I'm just, I can't hear anything he says when he's sitting there. So, just make sure if you are going to make a motion tonight, if you do, that you can memorialize any distances that you're, because I can't hear what he's claiming the distances would be or anything. We might want a surveyor to verify those dimensions prior to actually making a determination also, so that you can make sure that they're accurate, so that we're not just coming back again for another. The other problem with moving this shed over is because of the size of the shed, it might also then encroach onto the west property line, and therefore we'll need a variance to the west side also. So we'll need to renotice.
So what about I think you had the idea of postponing again to the next meeting after some modifications are made? Is that?
That's what I suggested versus trying to capture it in a motion with uncertain surveys on, a lot of uncertainties, I think, right now, what we think could be done, but it's a question of talking to your builder, architect, or survey company or whatnot, what can actually be done, and then put that in an application. I'd be less concerned if we encroached a foot to the west, if it improved the east side, that's a 1 or 2 foot encroachment there, even if it had 2 variances. It would settle all the issues on the east side where there's conflict with the neighbors. So,
Yeah, I get that. I just want to make sure that we have the legal notice in the newspaper, so that if we do approve that, it is legally noticed, and therefore, if we get a lawsuit, it's we did our due diligence to notify the neighbors of that variance. So that I also agree that moving it that way has less impacts on everybody.
I'm encouraged by the applicant's efforts to try and make additional changes and modifications to reduce the impacts that the building has right now. And am encouraged that a solution could be achieved with postponing the until we are better able to put all of the details together.
Sure the numbers are where they should be.
So then the new application would have, or the revised application would have specific measurements that we would base our
Yeah.
decision off of.
So I think what I'm hearing is you would be looking for the applicant to move the structure as far to the west as he could. And then have, we would need the resurvey done showing the dimensions to the east, north, and west property lines to verify that it either meets or does not meet those. We would need to re-notify at that point. You're also looking for some sort of solution to the drainage issues, both on the slab and on the structure itself.
The slab, the structure, and the retaining wall.
And the retaining wall, yeah.
Is everybody in agreement on this approach?
Yes.
Okay. So then, do we need a motion to postpone the application? Yes, Scott.
I do have there is a fee for extending a ZBA project. Would you want us to collect that fee or waive that fee? So usually it's waived if it's a reason for that we just postponed it and it was because of us. If we postponed it because of the application, then it's the applicant. And it's because all these hearings do have costs. They cost about $700 to $900 a meeting. So we have to cover those costs somehow, and otherwise the citizens of Sylvan Township cover those costs with their taxes.
What is the fee for postponing?
I will check. If the alternative to postponing would be denying, I would imagine. Let me, I'm on our website right now looking for the fee schedule. I'm on our internet there at the office though, so that's why it's taking. Let's see. Rehearing is $450.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So I'm of the mind to require the fee because this is not a situation created by the board. Does anybody else have an opinion about that?
I agree with you.
I think it's a question to the applicant. Do you want us to vote tonight or would you rather prefer we table it?
Okay. Let's do standards review then.
Now, if we vote tonight, Scott, can you confirm they can't bring another variance on this shed for, is it 12 months or 24 months?
There is a provision, however, the provision is for same or similar project, and there's no definition of what a same or similar project is. So we could, if this, let's say he decides to move the shed to 4 feet after you deny the project tonight, then we could allow that. Let me verify that. I mean, again, there's no definition of what similar is.
Can you hear me, Scott?
But I know. Yeah, I didn't hear what that was.
There is no way that I can move the shed 4 feet
Yes.
to the west.
It's just gonna cost.
I can.
Right.
I-
That's excellent. That means the project can be denied. It doesn't, we're not asking you to move the shed 4 feet to the west. the project is, does this variance meet the requirements of the code? So if you can't move the shed anywhere, then the project can be denied and no shed can be put up.
Okay, so if I decide to put a shed there, the only place that shed could possibly go is in the middle of the driveway. And even then, I would need a variance. Somewhere I need to store gasoline, outdoor equipment. I need to put some stuff out there. I understood that I needed a variance if I was going over 140 square feet of space. I'm not going over that, but I understand also that somehow the rules have changed. And so now I've got this little bit bigger shed and no place to put it. What do you suggest I do from this point? I need a place to put gasoline and stuff. I can't put it in the house. I have no garage. I have no boathouse.
I would suggest that you go back to what the commissioners were suggesting, is that you move the shed as far as you possibly can to the west, get the survey to state what the dimensions actually are, get the drainage off of the roof of the structure and the slab to go towards the south instead of towards your east property line, and then come back with the project and see if the ZBA will approve the variance.
All right.
It sounded like that they were moving towards an approval of that type of variance, and they were not looking favorably on the variance that you're requesting tonight.
True.
Okay, I can go that route. So is that an extension of what we're doing, or are we voting on doing that? I mean, where do I go from here?
I think the ZBA can, so what that means is they are tabling the project. You are getting all of that information, paying the $450 rehearing fee, and then coming back with a project that may receive an approval.
All right, very good. Thank you.
Okay, sounds like we're ready to vote then to table, or what's the correct term? Postpone, table, continue.
It can be any of those. It doesn't matter. More than likely, we'll have to have an entire rehearing because I'll need to repost the notice based on the new setback requirements that when his surveyor sends the new survey and shows the dimensions, we're going to need a variance to the east, west, and north property line. And more than likely, it's going to be different than the 1.7 foot that was noticed, the 20.5 foot that was noticed. And there'll be a new, because currently I think the shed is 20 feet or 21 foot from the west property line. So it will probably be within the setback of the west property line also.
Okay.
So you could I would call it table, and then we'll just renotice it.
Before you do that, I guess I would ask the fellow board members, do they have any concerns with those revisions before we come back another time?
If you can get 36 from that one end. I shouldn't say that, but
And remediate the issues, concerns we had regarding the water.
Yeah, I think we stated concerns about east property line distance and the water and soil drainage.
Yeah.
All right, well, I will move to table this variance application to a future meeting when the applicant brings a revised application to the ZBA.
Support.
Tom seconds.
Yes.
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 Okay. Motion carries. Okay.
I might have.
All right, I think we wrapped up that agenda item. Thank you for coming to present your application. Appreciate it. We have no new business. Communications and petitions, none as far as I've seen. And then we have comments from the ZBA, I think, who attended a meeting or a workshop.
Yes, I think Ed and I both attended the workshop. I appreciated the opportunity to be a part of that meeting. There were a number of things in there that seemed that I don't want to call elementary, but things that we regularly do and practices we regularly embrace. But it was good to have reinforcement that the procedures that we generally have been doing are and have been followed by the board. So I appreciated that. The one note that I did take from the meeting is that the feeling I got was that as we review all petitions, we should review each petition on an individual basis and not compare it to something we have done before. And that we need to evaluate a project when it comes to us on the terms for that project and not necessarily compare it to other projects that we have done. And I thought that was sound advice and a practice I think we should partake with.
I agree with what Mark said. I'll add, I thought it was probably an ideal training for a first-time board member. I would say the first 65% of it
Right.
was pretty fundamental that we all know and do, and quite frankly, was a waste of my time. The back end of the meeting got into some of the heavier stuff. I think Mark made a great point that we sometimes do try to look at past projects and concerned about setting precedents, and it clarified that you don't do that. They're each unique and individual. I think the other takeaway from the meeting was in general, there was a very strong tone at the end of that meeting that, variances should be extremely rarely granted. And we are much more accommodating than the training suggested in our ZBA. I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, because I think we're letting homeowners improve their property. Some of these homes that we've let be tore down and improved, the homes were an eyesore, a shack. They were a detriment to the neighborhood. So I think by doing that in this township, we end up with a better township, a better neighborhood, a better situation for the local residents around these properties. So I don't think we should change in that, but I think probably in a city or a bigger metropolitan area, you probably have to be a lot more stringent is what they suggested. And a variance is an extremely rare.
95% of them should be turned down is what I heard when I first started,
Oh, wow.
because they.
And the reason for that is that the standard is very strict, the particular difficulty undue hardship standard. And if you are approving variances not based on those standards, it opens you up to lawsuits. So that's why you'll hear that 95% should be denied, Because again, you don't want to just approve it because it's a good thing for the community. If we find that it's a good thing for the community, we should change our code to allow that good thing for the community, not require a variance for it.
Right, right.
And prior to you taking on the role, Scott, that was a thing this board has suggested and pushed to the township that they should maybe create a lake district. I don't think it's
Yeah.
really anywhere, and there's pros and cons to it. And, you know, I was a big supporter of it early on. Hearing some of the cons, I'm not sure I'm such a big supporter of a lake district, but that's where 95% of our variances are on the lakes in this township. And because the houses, the existing plots are so narrow, so.
Yeah, I think what we're going to do is your suggestion from like 4 meetings ago is just to revise the setbacks in the LR district instead of creating a new lake district, and that should clean up a lot of those variances.
The other take I think I got from the meeting, and I don't know if you feel similarly or not, Ed.
I think I might have lost you again. I don't know. Can you guys hear me?
There, we were on mute, sorry.
It's
Oh, all right. I was like, I can see you guys moving,
It
but
was
I
us.
can't hear you.
at the
right.
an impression I received from the training was they were encouraging that the board review the applicant's requests and not necessarily be a source of solution for them, but one to simply judge the application by the standards the applicant is reviewing and not being a part in trying to negotiate what is
Correct.
best.
Yeah. So a lot of the times they'll just deny the projects instead of try to help them redesign them. Yes.
Right. And not too indifferent from what Ed had kind of mentioned earlier. And this community is a bit different than some of the communities that were in there that are a much more metropolitan area where the dialogue just doesn't seem to be as open and friendly as perhaps it would be here. And so, but that was just one of the things that I took away from it, that I don't want to appear to be someone trying to negotiate with the applicant to find a resolution for their variance versus my responsibility is to simply review the documents, the application and the conditions, and then make a evaluation and judgment on those. And I'm not sure, I've always felt that way, that I thought perhaps previously that sometimes we're trying to find a solution on behalf of the applicant versus our role as
You're right.
persons just sitting back and evaluating.
We were negotiating, steering them towards the direction where they wanted to.
Right.
Where it would be.
Is there, Scott,
Yeah.
is there a downside to that approach?
The downside, the downside is in the legalese is still with this with the requirement that something has to have a variance. Even the standard isn't that it doesn't impact the neighbor, that there is a particular difficulty or undue hardship based on the size, shape, or location of the property that a variance is required. So you're by negotiating to try to make everybody happy, it doesn't really address the underlining code, you know? So that's why they don't really want you to do it. Again, I think I am from a area that I did 12 years of work in California, very litigious state. So variances were very hard to be granted, and it was because every one of them was going to go to a court of law at the end of the day. So none of them were going to be decided by the ZBA. They were going to be decided by the ZBA, and then that ZBA decision was going to go to the courts, and the courts were going to figure out if the ZBA made that decision correctly. So I think what has happened in Michigan is, again, you do try to play sort of a peacemaker role instead of just a role where you look at the strict standard and go, does this meet the standard? Does this not meet the standard? So I do see I do understand why they don't want you to do that, but I also understand why you guys do take that approach, because it is your community and you're trying to make the community better.
I do think the applicants appreciate us doing that.
Correct.
And we haven't been sued yet, at least since I've been on this board. I know we have in the past.
Almost nobody in Michigan gets sued over variances. So it's very uncommon. So let's hope that stays the more wealthy people get, because I think it's the wealth that creates the, oh, well, I'm just going to take you to court kind of mentality. My average house price in my community was $1.8 million. So
Oh, yeah. That's
The last time a ZBA decision got sued was a denial over that party store, and they put the party store in. That was before my time.
oh, well, do you know that one?
That was the Kavanaugh Lake store. It was a party store. It went to a greenhouse, which was a less or it was more in compliance with the code, since they were only in operation for 8 hours a day. And I know that there was huge upswelling of support in the community for the store, but it was denied, and then they sued, and
Well, there was a lot of
denial was
support.
overturned in court.
Goes back up. There was a lot of support for the flower shop too.
and that's a different situation, because that's a use variance. So we won't see that anymore. So use variances are very uncommon, and I don't believe townships can grant use variances anymore. So the ZBA won't be involved in those.
Good.
And those are super tricky. So,
Would you put a flower
Well,
shop way out there?
Tonight's hearing was a case in point, and that I think the board was receptive in trying to address Dennis and Nancy in a way to resolve this amicably for everyone.
We did give him way out and he didn't like it at first.
I don't know if you,
yeah,
I don't know if you understood it.
I don't know, but I was,
Right.
I could have,
I think we can have more of this conversation, not at the public meeting.
exactly, exactly.
Right.
So
Good
move
point.
motion.
And with that training, it is unfortunate. There was a advanced training that was the week of the 19th that you guys should have gone to, instead of that beginner training that that it sounds like that the one that you went to was. There was advanced ZBA technique or something the week of the 19th, put on by the same people.
Right.
I think we both I got something out of it, you know?
And I am a firm believer, and sometimes a review, if nothing changes, is still a good thing, is simply reconfirms that what you're doing is appropriate.
Excellent. I'm glad. I'm a huge advocate for training everybody on the board. I think as much training as you guys want, let me know, and I'll continue to push trainings out there when I see them to you guys. So if I see any good ones, I'll let you know.
Sounds good. Thanks, Scott. All right, there's no further comments. We will go ahead and adjourn at 8:05. And then next meeting date, April 24th. Does that still work for everybody?
Mhm.
Good. Okay. Perfect.